You do a lot. Okay. Whenever you're ready.
Your background just went away, but I can still see you, so don't worry about it. That's the important thing.
I guess it's because I hit record.
Just doesn't like that. Okay. All right.
Oh wait, let me see though, because for your YouTube, I want to see if I can make it work.
Oh yeah.
I don't know why it's being a butt all of a sudden.
There you go. You got it.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What'd you do? Do you know?
I just clicked on the little camera to change the background.
That is so weird.
I know. It's just like messing with me, man. I need to see if there's like an update or something I need to do. Okay, so we're good?
We are good.
All right, ready?
Ready. Hello, fellow weirdos, and welcome to Horror Through Her Eyes. You've got the Taminator here and Amateur Destroyer, ready to explore the twisted world of horror and prove that girls enjoy horror just as much as the guys do.
Yeah, exactly. We do.
Tonight is just going to be like we're just going to get right back into our review of Fall of the House of Usher. That was Jessica's pick, because neither of us have really watched anything since last week, and there's not really much new headlines or news or anything like that. So if you're cool with that, Jessica, I say we just get right into it.
Yes, we're going to get right into it. We already gave introduction of the Fall of the House of Usher in our last episode. So we're just going to go ahead and dive into episode 3 here, which is Murder in the Rue Morgue. And that is, of course, based on the short story Murders in the Rue Morgue. And just like with our last episode, I'm going to have links to all of the poems and short stories for each episode in our show notes that you guys can check out in that poem museum that's online, as well as, I think in real life it's in Virginia, if I'm remembering correctly. But for episode 3, a little synopsis here for everyone is: in charge of the Usher's publicity, Camille conspires to spin controversy in her family's favor and expose the grim details of her sister's experiments. So this is the Camille heavy episode, since, you know, all of these episodes are really kind of dedicated to a specific character. So this is going to be Camille's episode. And of course, Kate is it Kate Siegel, you think is how you pronounce?
It's Siegel, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, yeah.
I guess I never tried saying it out loud. But Kate Siegel is, Mike Flanagan's wife, and she's the one who plays Camille. So this is going to be her heavy episode.
And I know each one is just per character, but I just loved her character so much. I just wish we got more of her. I get it. I understand, like, that's the structure of this whole thing, but I just feel like she was I'm biased because I love her so much anyway, but
right.
She was such a dynamic character, and we just don't get that much of her. So I really like this episode.
Yeah, she is a really fun character. She's still not likable, like,
oh God, no
most of the Ushers, but she was definitely entertaining, if nothing else.
Yeah.
So the episode kind of starts with her trying to put a spin on the death of Perry, for the public, and try to make him appear as like a JFK Jr. kind of deal instead of what was really going down. So she's working on that, which she's the master of. That's her thing. And they also discover Morella, Frederick, aka Frederick's wife, who survived the acid rain in the nightclub. So she's actually rescued, but burnt real bad, looking pretty gooey.
Yeah.
And she's taken to the hospital. And so Perry's definitely dead. And Morella survived, as well as the staff that were warned by Verna ahead of time. And Pym, played by Mark Hamill, he gets an image of Verna as the woman in the red cloak in the footage from the party that Perry was recording in order to blackmail everybody. So that actually came in handy for Pym because he sees this mysterious cloaked figure and is trying to figure out if maybe that's the person who did this. And we know Pym is also very good at his job. So already he's kind of got his scent on the right trail. And Roderick and Madeline, they don't recognize Verna when he shows them the footage at first. So
Well,
we
because
have.
she looks like this, right? Or does she take her mask off at any time? Because I know she didn't they catch her whispering to the wait staff, but I don't know that she ever, until she goes in the room with Perry, I don't know that she ever takes it off.
Right. I honestly don't remember, but in that room, they might have I think because they had recording devices in all the rooms.
Oh, that's right.
So they might, I know we just watched this, but I cannot remember if they got an actual picture of her, but I'm assuming they did if Pym is asking them if they recognize her.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I think that he must have gotten a glimpse of her face at some point on the footage, which I'm sure she wasn't trying to hide at all. But he's suspecting that she's tied to Perry's death somehow. And so now after all of this is established, we're moving on to Camille, and she's investigating her half-sister Victorine because she is still pretty set that Victorine is the informant. So she wants to go check out her lab and see if she can get any dirt on her, because that is the other half of her job.
Why do you think she fixated so much on her being the informant? There's no reason to think that. You know what I mean? No reason more than anybody else.
I think she's just jealous because their dad was favoring Victorine because of the project that she was working on.
Yeah,
I think that's the only reason why her and Tamerlane are always giving her crap. Like, oh, she's daddy's favorite. Like, if you bought us a lab, we would impress you too.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the only reason. Okay. But so she wants to go check out the lab. And before she does that, she's talking with her two assistants, Toby and Tina, in this really hilarious scene where they confess to her that they've fallen in love and they no longer want to have sex with her. And she very directly reminds them that they have NDAs and consent forms that they signed for their full service position.
Yeah.
And basically is gonna shut them down. I think she ends up firing them, right?
Yes.
She asks them to like do one more thing and they're like, seriously?
Yeah. I mean, she legit thinks like, she's like, you are like, I'm sorry, but you're like contractually obligated to me to do this. And they're like, no, bye. And she's like, before you go.
Yeah. So funny. It's just a funny little scene. I like it. It gives us even more of her character. And just like, they all have these weird kinks and stuff.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I just think that that's really funny too. But yeah, she's a fun character. And so after all this goes down, she goes to the lab to see what she can find. And that is when she meets with Verna at the lab, who is now a security guard.
Yeah.
And they have a really fun little, I don't know what would you call it?
Interaction. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like she comes in there like she's all big and bad. You know, Camille's just like used to being in charge of every situation that she goes in. Just she automatically starts treating Verna, who's just sitting at the security desk, being a security lady, just like she's, you know, an idiot, and that, you know, it's like kind of like, don't you know who I am or whatever. And in the whole, I mean, we as the audience know, like, oh, you don't know what you're up against, Camille, you know, and, you know, Verna just kind of plays along, or whatever her name is here. And but I mean, this one really goes from 0 to 100 very, very quickly, I would say. Yeah. And it's one of the few times that, like, I think Verna, like, kind of shows herself as a supernatural character, because she doesn't really too much to the other people, you know?
That's true. Like in a much more direct way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but it is really fun watching them kind of go back and forth, and Verna's just super cool, and Camille's kind of losing her shit.
Well, because I think Camille gets put off right away because she kind of notices after not too much time that Verna's not really kowtowing to her, like not treating her with the respect that she feels like, or like
Right.
not being subservient to her, whatever, and getting
Yeah.
closer and closer into her space, and just too much eye contact, and you can just
Yeah.
see Camille is get like starts to try to like move away from her, noticing that okay, this lady is something up with this chick. What's going on?
Right.
And then we see very quickly that yeah, there's something up with that chick.
Yes. 'Cause the ushers are just so entitled, and they think that they can just move mountains with their money.
Yes.
That's it. So, yeah, she's like obviously uncomfortable by this interaction, but thinks that she wins the debate in the end. But we soon find out that that is not true.
Yes.
And again, Verna does try to give her kind of a warning, saying that you never needed to come to this lab, and you're the clever one. And her death is still imminent, but she could have put it off for a little longer, is kind of what it sounds like.
Well, yeah, because when she first came in, Verna wasn't going to let her in, right? And then she's kind of just like, "Don't you know who I am? Like, I
Yeah,
can freaking take you down, and my family owns this place, and blah blah blah." And
right.
yeah, like you could have left, but no, 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 you just had to push your way in here. So now I'm afraid I have to kill
Exactly.
you.
Exactly. And so in this next scene, when Camille's trying to record the lab, she's checking out all the chimps, and she's seeing the mesh heart device implanted, um, and all of that. And oh, I kind of hate the scene just because I hate, the idea of testing on animals, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
But it is really cool when all of a sudden a chimp rises up, and it's actually Verna who's become a chimp to attack Camille. But when she's recording it, you can see the chimp on the camera, but she is seeing Verna in front
yeah.
of her.
Hmm.
And it's just like a really, really fun trick that they did.
Yeah.
Um, so that was super cool. And then, of course, the chimp attacks. And that
And
is
pretty
the
much just rips Camille into shreds, pretty much.
Yeah, that is the end of poor Camille.
Yeah.
But yes, it's very, very cool. Cool scene. All right. And then aside from this scene, Verna has also appeared to Tamerlane and Bill for one of their little after hours psychosexual live theater game that they're so into.
Oh my God, that is the most perfect description of that I've ever heard.
Yes. I have to admit I stole that from the Netflix
Well,
recap, but
whoever
it's
came
very
up with that's
fitting.
exactly what it is because it was very hard to put into words last time or last week when I was
Yes,
trying to explain it. So yeah.
exactly. So she's posing as an escort and joins them for an evening. What I really do like about this scene is that she has this real, genuine moment with Bill at the dinner table over dinner, and you can see them connect, and he feels so seen and like he's not just hanging out with a sex worker. It's like somebody genuinely cares about how his day was, and
But you
it's
can
like
also
kind of
see it.
sad.
Yeah, you can also see it on Tamerlane too, because that kind of makes her, she normally starts right in on what she does, and you can just see
Hmm.
her, she's noticing that, like, hold up, these two are like, it's not, no, you're not supposed to like be interacting like that. She can see that her husband is like having a real moment with this woman, and it just, I think that's the start of things not going quite as planned,
Yeah.
because she's just supposed to come in there and yeah, she's pretending to be his wife and all that, but there's none of the like looking in each other's eyes kind of stuff supposed to be going on that seems to be going on here. So I think Tamerlane's just a little taken aback and maybe not quite as turned on as she normally is.
Yeah, totally. All right, and that's Tamerlane's first interaction with her. So we see that she's kind of weaving her way into all of the ushers' lives, and kind of like introducing herself to these different family members.
Yeah.
So it's really great the way that they start setting up for future episodes. within the current episode. And it's just works so perfectly. I love it.
Me too. Me too.
Another thing that happens is that Leo gets super wasted because he's like really distraught about Perry dying. And all the other ushers are just concerned with covering it up. And Leo is at least like, this is fucked up. Like, why don't you guys care that our brother died? Like, he's hurting over it.
Yep.
So at least we get that little bit of dimension to Leo. But he is still a fuck up.
Yeah.
And he does
Yes,
get
he
totally
is.
wasted on all kinds of drugs and alcohol. And when he wakes up in the morning, he's covered in blood. And he's really confused. He's clearly confused. And he's kind of looking around their apartment. And he finds that he accidentally killed their cat, Pluto, which he had stabbed to death, which is pretty brutal. And he doesn't look happy that he had done
Yeah.
this. He clearly
Yep.
does not remember it at all. But he starts cleaning furiously. I'm trying to remember. I think Julius must have gone to work or something, because he wasn't there when he had woken up. So he's like cleaning like a madman, and then he's out on the hunt to find a new black cat that looks just like Pluto so that Julius won't disown him. Um, and so that's the kind of setup for more to come. But then we're flashed back to 1979 again, where Roderick, who's played by Zach Gilford, as previously discussed, discovers that his idea to bring Ligadone to Fortunato was stolen by Rufus Griswold,
Yep.
the CEO, or is he the CEO? I remember we talked about this. We don't know if he's the actual CEO, but he's like the boss of Roderick, if nothing more.
Right.
So
He's
this,
something, I'm not sure of his initials. He's something like that.
yes. So he's the boss. They decided to steal his idea. And they give him a check for $500 and they give him a promotion, and remind him that he needs to be thankful. And Annabelle Lee, Roderick's wife, back in 1979, she's like, hey, that's great. We got a little more money for the
Yeah.
kids. Like, we'll take it, kind of sucks, but, whatever. And Madeline sees this as an opportunity, to gain Roderick some more influence, because she's like, hey, you have a part in this now, something that they've done that you were a part of. Like, we can kind of leverage this at some point in the future. So we just got to play our cards right.
Right. But I think at this point, Roderick's still, he's got, like we were saying before, he's got Annabelle Lee on one shoulder and Madeline on the other. And I'm not sure he's totally, I think this is the moment that he starts to go corrupt, but I really don't think he was up until this point. It's definitely Madeline that has that streak in her, I think, that's always feels like those kids were done so wrong since birth, I think, and has just
Yeah.
been, I think, biding her time, waiting, like just conniving a way to get back at these people, where I think Roderick really would have, like, I think he really thought he was, going to get the job there, and he's got this idea for the Ligadone, and I think he really thought he was going to be helping people, and I think now he's starting to have his eyes open to how corporate America really is.
Yeah.
The top stay on top, the bottom stay on the bottom, and that's just how it is. But
Yes, I
Madeline's not
agree.
having it at all.
Yeah. So she's just starting to scheme, at this point.
Right.
Just going to spiral real quick here.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree that at this moment, I think he's still just trying to like make an honest living and fight his way to the top,
Well, you could tell he
like the
was
right
so
way.
gobsmacked that
Yeah.
he had stolen his idea and then insulted him by like, oh, here's $500 when this company's going to make, God, billions. What comes after billions? I don't even know. Off of this
Right.
thing, and they're like, oh, here's $500 like to buy your silence now. Yeah, we're gonna, we'll move you up in the company some, but it's just, I think he just is like, what just happened?
Right. Yeah. And then I believe we close up this episode back in the present time with Roderick meeting with Augie, in the dilapidated house. And now he's seeing the corpse of Camille, and he's talking about how depraved the Ushers are and how they're able to spin and manipulate the media, and the general public in any way that they want because they have wealth and power.
Yeah.
And that's how that episode ends. I am trying to remember if it's this episode or maybe it was even in the prior episode. I think probably the beginning of this one. There's a nice moment when Camille comes over to Leo's apartment and they they get messed up together before he gets
Oh
super wasted.
yeah, that's right. Yes.
And they're
Yes,
kind
I
of like
remember.
hanging out and commiserating. And I think she had never been to his place before. And she, gets to meet Julius. And Julius has never met the Ushers because Leo's always like kept him away from them, which is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
retrospect, even though Julius is like, no, I want to meet your family. But I thought that was just kind of a fun little scene of the siblings actually bonding and Camille, who's so uptight, actually like relaxing for 5 seconds. And there's
Um,
some
I
goofy dialogue and stuff.
I totally agree. We don't get a lot of interaction at all between any of the siblings, let alone Camille and somebody.
Yeah.
And I had totally forgotten about that scene though till you just brought it up. But yeah, I totally agree. And it seems like maybe that was one of the siblings that she, for whatever reason, felt she could kind of let her guard down with a little bit and be just a little bit more normal, because
Hmm.
kind of like not having that business woman in a suit facade on all the time. She
Yeah.
just felt like they had some kind of a connection that she just didn't seem to have with anybody else. So yeah, that was nice. I
Yeah.
forgot
Maybe
about
it's because
that.
they were like the closest in age because he's the next
Oh,
older
yeah, that could be.
kid
But
after
she also
her.
like straight up seemed like she didn't consider that he might be the informant though either. Like
Right. Well,
she was like suspecting everybody, and
yeah.
she never confronted him with that, did she? I don't remember.
I don't think so. I mean,
Oh,
who could suspect Leo, if we're being
seriously.
honest?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
He's not really playing the game the way the others are. Like, he's still taking advantage of what he gets, but he doesn't seem like he's, playing the game.
Right. Yeah.
And so that ends episode 3. And so now we're going to jump into episode 4, which is The Black Cat. And we did recently watch The Black Cat for our other podcast, the Horror Cast, when we were doing um, our Poe series over there. So that was fun just to kind of tie those together a little bit. But
This has been the year of Poe in my life, I
yes,
feel like,
I know for us. Yeah,
Yeah.
I am not complaining.
No.
I think it's been so fun and I love it. And it just makes me want to go back and reread all of his work because it's been a long time for me, actually. But for episode 4, Leo adopts a black cat who soon brings evil and a mysterious woman into his home, while Roderick struggles with terrifying hallucinations.
Yep.
We do have a new star appear in this episode, which is Malcolm Goodwin as young Augie or Dupin. Is that
Yep.
how you
Yeah.
do it?
Yep.
Yes. And that actor was also in Reacher and iZombie. He did not look familiar to me. I don't think I've
No,
seen him
me
in any.
either. Mhm.
He's really good though in this.
Oh yeah.
And so now we're through 2 of the Usher kids, Perry and Camille. And Roderick continues to emphasize that the family needs to become a wall in the face of this adversity. And I'm sure that, in general, they're all starting to kind of freak out at this point because 2 in a row like that,
Yeah.
feels very targeted.
And brutal. I mean, you just
Yeah.
discovered your one brother was melted by acid and your sister was ripped apart by a chimp. So
Yes.
it's not like your everyday death, you know what I mean? You just
No.
one of those would be like, I'm sorry, what like, what happened to my sister? But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Still hard to pin those deaths on a person, which makes sense, but still feels very targeted.
Yes.
So Roderick then confronts Victorine about why Camille would be snooping around her lab, and he's wondering if she's possibly the informant, since, that's what Camille does, and he knows that's what she was looking for.
Yep.
And at this point, instead of Victorine confessing that she was lying about the chimpanzees dying during surgery, she just tells him what he wants to hear and that the study is moving into human trials. And this actually placates him, and he kind of forgets about the whole informant thing. He's like, oh, that's great.
I know, but she was giving me anxiety doing this. Like, I'm like, oh,
I know.
They're going to figure you out and you're just making it worse and worse. But
This is how I feel every time anybody lies.
This is why
I can't lie. Yes. I cannot. I'm a terrible liar. It's just like way too much anxiety, trouble, and energy. And totally. I forget everything. So if I ever try to lie, I would just like forget that I had said something. And yeah. So I agree that this episode, probably more than any of them, gave me that kind of anxiety.
Yes, me too.
You're gonna get caught up in your lies.
Yeah. Well, and she just keeps it. Well, I know we'll talk about it, but she just keeps piling it on. And it's not like she even had a glimmer. She had nothing to go on. Nothing was working. And you're going to see in this episode, just the lies just start compounding, and she starts losing it, basically.
Absolutely. As would I. Maybe, hopefully not to her degree, but. And then they take a look at the security footage from the night that Camille died. And they discover, again, Verna is the security guard. So again, we're seeing Verna in some form of security footage. And at this point, Pym, I believe it's Pym, is it Pym that saw the security footage? Let me see.
He had it and he brings it to Madeline, right? And I
think so.
I do need to say here, like when we say that they have these pictures of Verna, she does look, it's her, but she does look strikingly different each time, like almost like different ages. Just like she totally.
Oh, it's so fun. It's like different hair, different makeup, different personalities, different attire, like she's just playing a different person every time, and it's so fun. I'm sure it was really fun for her as an actor to be able to do that.
He does such a good job. But I mean, I think it's, I think Madeline's starting to get an inkling, like, I feel like I know this person, but I'm not sure. But like, if you haven't seen this yet, or, it's just that you think, oh, well, it's the same person in the picture. Why don't they just realize it? But she really does look different enough. I think just different enough each time. So, yeah, it's not like totally obvious at this point. Although I think Pym is definitely starting to think something. I don't think he thinks supernatural or anything like that. No. But it's like.
But I think he thinks like that this is the same person each time, at least. Yeah. Right. And then they have to get the photo enhanced so that they can take a better look. And that's when Madeline goes to the old bar from 1979, but it's not there. So she finds it all boarded up, and there's a spray painted raven above the door and a real raven perched above watching her. But the bar is no longer open. So we see her go and check that out. So we're starting to feel like, okay, maybe she is putting the pieces together.
So do you think the raven is Verna's familiar, or do you think that's the form that Verna takes when she's not being Verna?
I assume it's the form that she takes.
Yeah, I did too, but I just wasn't 100% sure. But yeah, I think it's her.
Yeah, that's what I'm not 100% sure either, but that's just what I think, just based on like what the raven typically represents, and especially in Poe's work. And then, in the very first episode of the first scene we get of her, she has that beaked mask on.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So it just kind of makes me think that it's probably her.
Agree.
Get around faster that way. And at the same time that Madeline's going and checking out the bar, we see Roderick head down to the basement of the Fortunato building. And he looks unsettled, and he's starting to hear bells jingling from behind the brick wall. And then he looks really worried. And I think I can't remember if we've had instances where we've heard the bells yet, or if this is the first time. I know we got a glimpse of the jester.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't, which we would have heard the bells at that time, but I don't know. He's
Probably.
really starting to have hallucinations now. I can't remember, but here's where, I mean, I think this is where I didn't totally know, but I think this is where I started to kind of put together what I thought had maybe happened. I don't think I knew exactly what the bells were or anything like that, but
Mm-hmm.
and I won't say because I won't get ahead. But I think this is, and it was almost like it was hard. I'm not sure he even knew what the bells meant at this point. It's almost like they had put the wall so far out of their minds,
Yeah.
as well as the night with Verna. It just feels like their brain just doesn't even want to think about it. I mean,
Right.
obviously he knew right where to go and all that, so he knows what happened there. But it's like, I don't know, because supposedly he has this disease and he's starting to get dementia and stuff. So I'm just not sure what that was like for him, but
Right.
we can
Yeah,
tell
and at
some
this
things.
point, I think he's more concerned about like the dementia.
Yeah. Hmm.
And he hasn't like quite started putting all those pieces together yet. So I think that that's more heavy on his mind. Um, Sorry, my daughter's texting me and making my phone make a lot of noise. And
Kids.
I know they ruin everything. All right.
Everything okay?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
just texting me about Dracula.
Oh, well, that's
New episode
important.
came out. It is important. Um, so next we meet back up with Leo, who's looking for a new cat, and he finds an uncanny candidate to replace poor Pluto at a shelter. And who's there running the shelter? None other but Verna.
Verna, who looks now completely different again. It's
Yes.
her, but a very toned down version of her now.
Yeah. She's a perky lover of cats, and I just love all of her talk about the cats and stuff.
Yeah.
And that cat actually has a lot of applications, so she's trying to get him to look at other cats, which is
Her giving him
such
his
a
chance. Yeah,
yep.
right.
But he throws all the money at her. He's like, I will give you all the money. Give
Take
me
my
this cat.
money. Take all
Yeah.
my money. Yeah.
These
And
ushers and their money.
she plays with him a little. She's just like, I don't know,
Yeah,
And he gets the cat.
he does. He gets the
Spoiler, he
cat.
gets the cat.
And at this moment, he takes a picture of Verna holding the cat just so that he can really look at it, and look at pictures of Pluto and be like, holy shit, yes, this cat looks just like that cat. So then he decides to get the cat. But as soon as he brings the new cat home, it begins to terrorize him.
He does.
It
It like
does. And
bitch
it's,
slaps him every chance it gets.
oh, it like scratches his
Yeah.
eye. Oh, that's
Yes, I
terrible.
know.
And it leaves little dead, bloodied animals all over the apartment, which is fun. That's such a cat thing. And nobody seems to see this new cat every time Leo's complaining about the cat and someone enters the room and he's like, the fucking cat. No one ever sees it.
Yep.
It's like his weird imaginary ghost cat tormenting him. So actually, that makes me wonder, do you think it is the ghost of Pluto messing with him? That would be fun.
Or it's Verna,
Oh
like
yeah, probably.
something like that. I mean, it's obviously an extension of her of some kind, but
Right.
I don't know. Is it just, I mean, is it really there? I think it might be Verna, to be honest with you. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I thought, but I don't know. I'm not sure it's really there because yeah, no one ever sees it. All I see is his battle wounds.
Yes. He gets messed up.
Yeah.
And he gets to a point where he's just like tearing out all of the walls in his apartment trying to find the cat because the cat kind of disappears and he can hear it in the walls, or so he thinks. And it's
Which is
just
there's the Poe theme, the Poe part of it, right? That's a big thing with Poe. It's like people
Mm-hmm.
ripping stuff apart trying to find something in the walls.
Totally.
Yeah.
He loves his walls for some
Yeah.
reason. Yes.
There's a lot of like that in here. The more will come. That's all I'll say for right now.
Exactly. Oh yes. And he calls Verna to come get the cat. I totally forgot about that. He calls her. He's like totally distressed. He's like, "You need to come get this cat out of the walls of my apartment."
Yeah.
And so she does come, but suddenly the cat jumps out at him and tears out his throat.
Yep.
And he almost pops its eye out. It's crazy. It's so funny. It's kind of funny. It's just him fighting with this cat. And then, yes, he looks up to see Verna standing there with her eye popped out and licking blood off of her hands, and
Yeah.
he loses it. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, yes, I forgot he was ripping up the walls with his Thor hammer, his like
Oh, that's
Thor's
right.
hammer replica that was
Yeah.
sitting on the shelf. And of course, he has to make a comment about how Chris Hemsworth will get him another one.
Yeah.
Ushers and their money. Yes, and then he's trying to get this cat out of the freaking walls. So funny. Yes, and then Julius actually comes home and finds that Leo has destroyed the place. And he tries to stop him. And he doesn't hear the cat, and he doesn't see any of the dead animals that are supposedly in the bathtub or anywhere else.
Yep.
Um, but Leo has lost it, and he thinks that he sees the cat perched on the railing of the deck, like on the back patio porch of their apartment. And he runs at full speed with Thor's hammer in hand,
Yep.
and falls to his death over the railing.
Because
Messed
their
up.
apartment is like, it's like a skyscraper kind of not skyscraper, but it's like not on the first floor. It's like
Right.
up several
It's a
floors.
pretty tall building, yeah.
Yeah.
Which we had gotten that impression from when we first even met Leo, and he had that girl sneak out onto the back.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
But yes, that is Leo's demise via Black Cat.
Yep. So there goes another kid.
Yep, there goes another Usher. And also towards the end of this episode, we see Tamerlane, who's watching one of Bill's videos, like his live stream exercise class, and she thinks that she sees Verna, or she doesn't know her as Verna. She knows her as Candy, the sex worker.
Yep.
She thinks that she sees her in the video as well as one of the like backup exercise people. So now she's really kind of starting to get nervous about that whole situation, and jealous and thinking that they did have some sort of connection. But we're also really starting to see that her insomnia is also getting the better of her.
Yeah, she's, I mean, really starting to lose it.
Yeah.
She's almost like having like her dad's level of like hallucinations. But
Hallucinations, yeah.
I think they're tormenting hallucinations that have been given to her by Verna, which we find out later. But it's just, her big thing is she's just so super in control of everything. I think she especially thought she completely controlled Bill. So she kind of starts going off the rails thinking that Bill's getting away from her. And then, she sees Verna there, and she hasn't slept for a while at this point, I don't think. And
right.
So
and
yeah,
Bill's been so concerned about her.
Yeah, and it seemed like Bill was like I think she ultimately really had a lot of feelings for Bill, because I don't think she'd have gotten that tore up about it if she didn't. But Bill definitely had real feelings for her, and I think he was pretty hurt by what Tamerlane put him through. I mean, I think, people will put up a lot to have millions of dollars, and I think that might have been kind of what he was doing. But I think he truly, truly cared for her. I don't think he liked having the sex workers come and having to go through
he
that
even told her
every day.
that was like her thing.
Right.
It's like, I do that for you. I don't even want to do that. I feel bad for poor Bill.
I know. I totally felt bad for him too. And I really think at that point, I think he would have been willing to like kind of do just about anything for her, but she, you know, was just like, you're stupid, you don't know anything, I can handle all this, blah, blah, blah. But I think he was genuinely fearful for her at this
Yeah.
point. So.
And she's not getting any sleep because they're going to launch all of this stuff for the live stream exercise stuff. I don't even know exactly what it is that they're actually launching. I know there's some like products, like, I
Did
don't
the
know, maybe
products,
like wellness products or something that she's trying to sell, it seems
were they
like.
through Fortunato? Like, weren't they Fortunato or gonna be? They were. She was gonna. Okay, so Ligadone had hurt so many people. They were gonna come out launch these new products that were supposed to be nothing but beneficial. It was gonna change people's lives. How great these products were, and
Mm,
remember because she gave. I don't know if she does it here, but she goes to give that talk. It looks like they're like at a hotel conference room or whatever. But I think
yeah.
this, because that's why Madeline was so involved, is because they were really hoping this was going to be a turning point for Fortunato. Because I think they
Okay.
had built that, or they had gotten through that court case and had won it. That whatever, you know, that we see him in court at the beginning, and that's where Augie tried to say, you know, there's an informant or whatever, which there never was. And I think they beat that court case. And I think they were going to use these, whatever this new line of products, life changing, you know, because she was like,
Yeah.
their whole thing was like life coaching, right? Like they were like
Right.
influencers and all that kind of stuff. But I think that
Yeah.
she had been put in charge to, you know, like they were going to be launching this new you know, whole new line or something that Fortunato was going to be involved in that was, you know, supposed to be nothing but good and was going to be like a turning point for them. So,
Okay. I totally missed all of that. I just knew that she was trying to sell some wellness products or something. So that makes a lot of sense, especially with how tight the writing is in this show. And so also in this episode is when Pim goes to Freddie with the burner phone that he found on in Morella's belongings from the nightclub. And we kind of see Freddie like really contemplating where this came from, why she had it, why was she at this party, like what is going on. And he keeps kind of talking himself out of her doing anything bad at first, you know, but it's like he keeps going around and around in his head. And I think eventually he gets to a place where he has to like really come to terms that my wife intentionally went to this like sex crazed nightclub party with
which is
my very
true.
young brother.
But I think like I think he ended up, I think he took a lot of his because where he ends up going, I think he took a lot of his frustrations out on her because where he ultimately went seems way too cruel for what she did. Yes, she went to this party, and I'm sure in his mind he must have like pictured her having an orgy and all. But I think she never did anything bad when she was there. I think she was really just trying to like feel like herself again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, as a mom and all that, once your kids get older and you kind of just lose your identity. I think a lot of women do. I know I felt that way before, and it's just like I just want to feel like myself again and have something that was just mine. I mean, I don't know. She kind of seemed like she might have maybe been interested in him a little bit and then got hurt when he kind of like rebuffed her at the party. But
Hmm.
I don't think she really went there with bad intentions, like, yes, I'm going to go fuck my brother-in-law or anything like that. I
Yeah.
think she just was like, okay, because he flattered her and made her feel special. And I think
Right.
sometimes women just need to hear that because her husband certainly was like kind of always like mentally checked out and never really remember we were saying like he never listened to what his wife and daughter had to say too much. And, you
Yeah.
know, I just think, you know, but where he ends up taking it is just, not sure she deserved that. So anyway.
Right. Something we should mention, though, is that he's also starting to take a lot of cocaine, which he doesn't normally do. It's established. And actually, it's before Leo dies that he goes to Leo's apartment as well to get cocaine. And Leo's
That's
like,
right.
what?
Yeah,
They don't
that's
have
right.
like a special bonding moment or anything, though. He just like literally goes there to get cocaine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Leo's trying to kind of coach him like on how much to take and stuff because he's not normally a drug, you know, taker. So,
But he
so
wants
he,
to be more of a performer for his father. That's why he's doing it. That's like the only, when you say, it's like the only reason he suddenly starts doing it. It's like he just,
I really thought it was just to kind of cope with all the stuff going on with Morella is the interpretation that I got from it, but maybe
oh,
not.
okay. Well, maybe it's both. I mean, his life's starting to spiral now too, and his
Yeah, the
siblings are
cocaine's
dropping
not
like
helping.
flies at this point, you know?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And then we actually get to meet young Augie, who at the time was a Medicare fraud investigator. And he comes to Roderick's door back in 1979 to ask him about his signature that's on a whole bunch of forms for Fortunato. And it turns out that they have been forging his name on a bunch of forms so they can get people into drug trials without informing patients of the side effects. And as it turns out, a lot of these patients wound up dead and their bodies went missing from their graves. And so this is when we get to see where Augie is first entering this whole dilemma of Fortunato and Ligadone and the evil that it causes. And
And this
so
is back
he's,
where, like I said, that I don't quite think that Roderick had like gone to the dark side yet. And I think he agrees at first to help Augie, and I really think he meant to do it. You know,
I
that
think
that
so
was
too.
my interpretation anyway at first. But then
Yeah.
Madeline gets her claws into
Her
him. So,
closet, yep. But it's really nice at the very beginning of their relationship, seeing them work together.
yeah,
They're building a case against Fortunato. Um, and you can tell that Annabelle, his wife, is like super on board with this, and very supportive. And
yep,
Augie's really sweet. And he can really pick up on things about them and their life style and the way that
yeah.
they're living just by like paying attention to their apartment and the kids and stuff. And
And he discloses his homosexuality there, which would be a big deal for that time. You know,
whoa, I
especially
totally
being,
missed that.
yeah,
Did
when he's
he?
at their kitchen table, because they asked him, "Don't you have a wife or whatever?" And he kind of says he's waiting for me at home. And that's how he kind of like lets them
I
know.
literally missed that.
Yeah, that's the first time that he lets them know that, I believe.
Oh my
So,
God.
which would
Okay.
be a big deal because what year was it? It had to be 60.
79.
Oh, no, because no, this would be before 79 because this is just starting because didn't the wall incident happen in 79? Because that's when
Like at the
yeah,
very end, right before
at
1980.
New Year's night. So this stuff
Hmm.
was first meeting Augie and them doing the investigation has to be like early 70s, I would think, or at
I
least
don't
mid
think so. I
70s.
think it all happens within that year.
Really? Dang.
I
Okay.
mean, just according to recaps and stuff that I've
Oh,
read,
all right.
because they always specifically say 1979, but maybe not. Maybe it's
I mean,
earlier.
it could be because it never goes anywhere, right? Like it doesn't quite get a chance. The investigation doesn't get a chance to go anywhere, really.
Yeah,
So,
unfortunately. But yes, this is when they first get to meet up. And you can tell that Roderick's like, oh my God, they stole Ligadone from me, and now they're forging my signature on all these forms. And so he confronts his boss, Rufus. And this guy, is like, oh, we need you to be a team player. And I think he tries to kind of use it like, oh, well, it's good that you know about this now because now you can just be in on it, be on the team. And he's telling him, like, you want to be on my good side. We're going to make all these moves. I'm going to get you promotions and all this stuff. He's promising him all this stuff.
oh, an office on the same floor as him now instead of one, what, 4 floors down or whatever he said before. Like he just starts throwing everything at him to like try to spin it to like, oh, I'm so relieved that instead of like acknowledging what they did was so terrible to him, they're like, oh, it's so good that I'm so relieved that because now you can really be on board and be part of this, just like assuming he's going to want to come into all this corruption, you know?
Yeah. And when he brings this information home, Annabelle Lee is disgusted, of course.
Yeah.
And Madeline is intrigued. And this is where she really, really starts to
Yeah.
fashion her schemes.
Yeah.
So this might be the last that we see of good Roderick, as it turns out. But that ends episode 4, The Black Cat. Can
How do you
you?
feel? I can go on. I can go another if you want to, but I'm
Oh
leaving it
yeah.
up to you.
No, definitely. Did you have any other, do you remember anything else about this episode that you wanted to bring
Nope,
up?
I don't think so.
Okay, cool. I don't think so either. All right. So we're going to get into episode 5, The Telltale Heart, which was like my favorite short story when I was a little kid. I love this so much.
I remember. I mean, I first heard it, and we got taught it in school, like elementary
Mm-hmm.
school.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
me too.
hmm
I don't think they do that anymore, but they were still doing it when I was in elementary school.
we actually, I remember seeing a film strip. This is how old I am. We saw a film strip about it, and I was just like, I'm going to guess, like, I'd say about third grade, if I'm remembering correctly. And it, I don't know, it scared me.
Yeah, I
Like
feel like
that's
it was the first
just,
thing I read that made me feel scared,
yeah.
like before I got into like goosebumps and stuff.
hmm
Yeah,
Yeah.
so sweet. This little synopsis for this is Victorine inches closer to testing her heart technology on a patient until tensions erupt between her and Alessandra, and Dupin makes a chilling confession. So. So at this point, Roderick is starting to kind of have an idea about what's happening to his children, it seems. I think he's finally starting to kind of put the pieces together and not just think that he's, hallucinating all the time. And this is because Pym shows them the picture that Leo took of Verna with the cat. And they, of course, recognize her also as a security guard from Camille's death and the woman in the red cloak at Perry's party. So they're pretty sure that whoever she is, she's at the center of all of this.
And Madeline wants to, like, it seems like Roderick's on board with her being supernatural at this point, and Madeline seems to be like not having that at all. She's just like, I don't know how she's doing it. I don't know who she's linked up with. I don't know how she looks exactly the same 40 years later, but there's no way this can be the same lady or whatever. I don't. And Roderick's like, you know who this is, and she's just not having it at this
Yeah.
point.
Although she does have a theory that maybe it's her daughter or something, which like
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's like
Yeah.
somewhat reasonable, I guess.
Which I think is her just putting off the inevitable as long as
Yes.
possible, because she's such a no nonsense kind of a person. And I think Roderick's, he's got this disease now and he's already starting to have symptoms. And I think he's just more susceptible or accepting of, look, this, obviously this is all going down and you
Well, and
can,
all of his kids are dying. You
right.
know what I mean? She
Yeah,
doesn't have any
exactly.
kids.
Right. That's
It's all of
true.
his children that are dying.
Yeah.
So I think it's, even though he's a man of power and wealth, I think he somewhere cares about his children, hopefully.
Well, I mean, we've at least seen that side of him. Like we were just saying, we think up until this point, he really was a good guy. She's never
hmm
had that side, Madeline
hmm
hasn't. So, yeah,
No, she has not. Ever since she was a small child,
that's
she was
right.
all very, very negative.
Yep.
But yeah, so they're starting to put together that this is the woman. And she, brings back the bartender and the night of New Year's Eve in 1979 in front of Pym. And Roderick's kind of taken aback because they have a pact to never discuss that in front of anyone, not
Yep.
even Pym. But Madeline, just talks about it bluntly in front of Pym, and he is trying to find her, so I guess it's fine, right? At this point, what else are you going to do anyways?
Exactly.
And again, Roderick is heading down to the basement of the Fortunato building, which we have been seeing him do here and there throughout the episodes now. And he's back at that brick wall and he's still hearing the jingling of bells. And we see him really debate if he's like losing his mind or.
These are very sad. I don't know. I just found these to be very sad scenes. When we say he's going down to the basement, he's going down there and like slumping down to the floor and just sitting there and
Mhm.
staring at the wall. And I think I think it's him coming to terms with everything, the deaths of his children, possibly the comeuppance that he's got coming to him, what he
Yeah.
did 40 years ago. I just, you know, it's just sad, I think. First of all,
Yeah.
I find the idea of dementia terrifying.
Oh my
So I
God, the
just
most
can't.
terrifying.
Mm, so I just can't. I mean, how is he even handling all of this at one time? I mean, like with
Yeah.
literally within weeks, he's gone from like one of the most powerful men in the world to having dementia and half of his children are dead. So like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's in the scene where he's actually contemplating suicide.
yep,
And he's, talking to himself about how it might stop the rest of the deaths of his children from happening. But ultimately, he's unable to go through with any of the suicide attempts or thoughts. Not real attempts, but we do see him. He's like starting to unravel.
yes. And I
And
think he's
then,
always had two. I think this is like for the first time, at least since the whole, Augie coming into their lives. I think this is the first time he hasn't had Madeline right there. I think he's been trying to kind of like deal with this on his own. And I don't think he's dealt with anything on his own since
yeah,
1979. You know what I mean? Like I think he was like the face of the company, but I feel like she was like the power kind of almost. Yep,
right.
the
It's like
smarts.
probably keeping him from falling apart all this time.
Yep,
And yeah,
cleaning up
that
all
makes
the
sense, actually.
messes behind him
Hmm.
and all that. And he's really trying to not involve her necessarily, but I think he's also going through some things she can't help him with.
Right.
So yeah.
Totally. And then we're flashed back to 1979 again, and Madeline is meeting with Rufus in Fortunato. And it's about like this ahead of its time computer system that she's talking to him about because she's really into what is it that I'm trying to think of the word. It's not like algorithms or analyze it. What I can't think of the word of what it is that she likes to put in all these different like possibilities and figure out what the most likely outcome will be. There's a very specific term for
Yep.
that. I just can't think of it
I
right now.
cannot think of, I know exactly what you're talking about. I also cannot think of it right now.
I mean, we use it at my job too. I can't think of it. But anyway, she's trying to sell this idea to Rufus. It's just him and her in the office, and he's being like very gross and sexist and like trying to humiliate her when, she's not interested in like sleeping with him. And it's kind of a gross scene.
It is a
And
disgustingly gross scene. However, I'm sure this happened more times than not at this point. And
yeah.
if only, what, he was actually stupid to not take her up on it because that's the kind of the way the world ended up going. But this is, like when computers were just kind of starting to be, they certainly weren't necessarily in homes so much, but they were really starting to be in businesses and stuff like that. But I think most people didn't even really understand them and what they would become and how they worked. And, somebody at his level probably might have had one on his desk, but certainly would never have understood how important those were going to be someday. And I mean, I think had he gotten into computers at that point or listened to her, they could
Hmm.
have actually got a fortune in a legitimate way, but
Yeah.
he literally just, yes, she's very beautiful. Okay. But as soon as she walks in the door, he's already dismissed her and is like already like, bringing up, don't you, I'm not interested in what you have to say, but why don't we sleep together kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and she's just like, oh my God.
And he brings up how they're the illegitimate children of Longfellow, so he's aware of their connection to Fortunato in that sense. But then we see Madeline, go back to the apartment with Roderick and Annabelle, and she's telling them, as well as Dupin, that the meeting went really well, and she now knows for certain that Rufus is an idiot and that he underestimates them. And so we figure out that this was all part of the scheme
Yep.
for her to just kind of get like some insights on who he is, what kind of a person he is, like what they can get away with. Um, and Augie points out that the meeting also gave them another piece of information. So they know for sure that the documents that would incriminate Rufus and Fortunato still exist and are sitting down in the Fortunato building basement. So that was fun. I like when they're all working together.
Because she was offering to like digitize, I don't know if that's the word, all of their records,
I
right?
think that's
he
the
calls
right
her
word.
out on it and is like, "Oh yeah, sure, I know you're fishing for information. Maybe I'm not totally sure why or whatever." I don't even think he thinks that she's gonna like use it to promote her brother or anything. I think he thinks maybe she's up to something, but he does make that link, as stupid as he is and doofusy as he is. He does make that link that I kind of see what you're doing here. I think you ultimately want to get into my record. So I think he's too dumb, seriously, to like figure out the big picture, but he knows something is weird. And so then I think he's done with her. He just dismissed her at this point and is just like, why don't we get to what you really came here for? Because you want to sleep with me. He doesn't exactly say that, but that's what he acts like, because every woman must want to sleep with me because I'm a powerful white man,
Yeah, so, exactly. Gross.
Exactly.
But it's fun while it lasts. The interactions between Augie and Madeline and Roderick, when they're all kind of working together for the greater good. I wish that things would have continued down that lane.
Oh, me too, but then we wouldn't have a show, so we have to get, but I'm like ready for the whole series that in the ultimate universe where it's those three teaming up and fighting evil. You know what I mean?
Oh, that would be a fun spinoff.
I'm ready for that spinoff.
Just like a feel-good spinoff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because I loved Annabelle Lee so much. I could watch her all day. And I don't know. I just liked that dynamic between them.
Oh my God. You know what's really great too is that, that actress is obviously like the main villain in The Haunting of Hill House. And she's so like evil and manipulative and creepy in that series. And to see her play this really down to earth, like shining, beautiful, lovely wife and supportive person and mother, it's like, wow, she did a really, really good job at, because when I first saw her, I'm like, oh no. I knew you, creepy bitch.
Yeah.
But she wins me over, and then I was able to not think of her as just that character.
Yeah, that's so true. No, she was like the mother everybody would want, the wife everybody would want, and exceedingly beautiful on top of it. So
I know, her beautiful, like curly reddish brown hair. I loved it. Yep. But back in the present day, Alessandra finds out that Victorine is pushing for human trials for their heart mesh device, by not just scheduling her for surgery, but also forging her signature on data reports.
Here's more signature forging.
Yes, and she is pissed. And Victorine's trying to be like, oh, it's fine. What are you talking about? Just trying to play it cool. And she's like, what are you talking about? This is not fine. Like, I can get in so much trouble, obviously lose my practice and my license and all of these things. And Victorine is just like so desperate to get into these damn human trials, that she's just like not doing things the way that she should be.
Well, we were talking about her lies compounding before. I mean, now I think they've just compounded so much that she doesn't even know reality from not reality anymore. And you have to, I mean, yes, that Alessandra is her business partner, but it's also her girlfriend's. And I think she's one of the few characters that was not blinded by the Usher opulence. I think she really loved her and really considered them business partners and just wasn't blinded by that money and fame and all that. And I think was just super, super hurt. I think also when she found out that her girlfriend was obviously losing her mind, but also would deceive her in such a way that, she straight up totally threatened her whole career and wasn't even going to tell her about it,
Yeah. I'm assuming that, in the time before we've gotten to know the Ushers, that Victorine and Alessandra probably have like a pretty good relationship, and she's probably normally not a terrible person, and that the circumstances like really pushed her into becoming a monster, just like the rest of her family. And Alessandra is like, this is over. I'm done with this. And she's about to head out. And Victorine's like, what about the NDAs? Everyone's got to bring up the friggin' NDAs every time someone wants to
Yeah.
leave. But in anger, Victorine hurls a marble bookend towards Alessandra as she leaves the apartment or their house. I don't. It's a house. Yeah, yeah, it's a house. It's a pretty nice house. But
It was like her office in the house, I think. Like it seemed
yeah,
like yeah.
yeah. And so they're over. And the next time we see Victorine, she's in her office and she's trying to call Alessandra to apologize, and she keeps calling her. You see when she looks at her phone, there's all these missed calls.
Yeah.
And we could tell she's just becoming more and more frantic. And that she's freaked out about the human trials, but she's also freaked out about losing Alessandra. And she's just like, looks like a completely deranged person at this point.
Well, she knows, I mean, Alessandra's parting words, at least we think they were, is I'm exposing you. I don't care. And I think in Victorine's mind, it's like my dad's gonna find out I'm a fraud. Like, yes, she hated
Mhm.
losing her girlfriend now, but I think ultimately it's like my jig is up. Everybody's gonna find out, but especially my dad's gonna find out that I'm a fraud, you know?
True. Yeah. Yeah. And while in her office, she also keeps hearing this chirping sound and she can't figure out where it's coming from. And so this is where the telltale heart
Yeah.
really comes into play.
Yep.
She keeps hearing the sound that's consuming her and she can't get it to stop. And so later that day, Roderick shows up at her house and he's going to actually offer his complete support, and he's apologizing for pitting his children against each other. And it's like this really sweet, genuine moment from him where he's starting to finally realize like all of the wrongs that his empire have done, at least to his family.
Yep.
Like if he's still not thinking about the greater world, like you could tell he feels bad about all of his kids going after each other. But we can see that she's distracted because she's still hearing that chirping, even in her house. And then Roderick admits that he can actually hear it too. So he's like looking around, trying to figure out where the chirping's coming from. And he's smelling something kind of strange. And then we see that while this is happening, Victorine is starting to kind of remember what had happened when her and Alessandra had gotten into their fight. And what happened was when she threw that bookend at her, it actually hit her in the head, and she slowly bled out on the floor in front of her. And Victorine could have called someone for
Yep.
help. There was a moment where we see her kind of thinking and realizing, because she's not dead yet, but when she realizes like that she's definitely going to die, she doesn't do
No, because
anything. She doesn't call anyone. She just watches her die. And it's
she thinks her problems will
horrific.
be over then. Yep.
It's really a horrific scene. And
Yeah.
then we're like, okay, this is who Victorine really is.
Yeah.
This is what you would allow. It's really terrible. And at the same time, Roderick follows the sound into their back room, and he sees Alessandra as dead and propped up against the wall with her chest cut open. And now he knows that the sound is coming from the heart mesh device that Victorine had sewed into her dead girlfriend's lifeless heart. And it has been pumping and pumping and pumping ever since.
Yep.
Ugh, what a cool scene. What a gross and cool scene. And we just see like the life kind of leave Roderick's eyes. He's like, oh my God, what have I done? Like, what have I started and created? And then also because Victorine is now realizing what she did and is no longer in denial, I think she stabs herself in the heart right in front of Roderick.
Right in front of Roderick. Like
Yes.
right in front of him.
Poor Fred.
And
He like deserves everything that happens to him, but
I
I
know,
still
but I
feel kind
feel
of
the
bad.
same way as you do. I feel like I do. I feel that. I do.
He's this old guy, like
Yeah.
battling with dementia. And I'm like, oh,
Yep.
sad. Oh, so that is the
And
end
what?
of
That's his
Victorine.
fourth kid down now, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Two more to go.
Yep. Yeah, so that is the end of that scene. And then we do actually get to see Tamerlane again in her home, and her hallucinations that she's having all these weird jealous delusions of Verna, are getting worse and worse. And this ends up turning into a screaming fight between her and Bill. And she is so insulting,
Oh,
and
yeah.
this is when she basically tells him that she can replace him and she doesn't need him. She just needs a business partner.
And
You
that's
know,
all
and
he
that
ever was, she tells
and that
him.
yeah, she's like pretty much I picked you out specifically for this. And you
Yep.
can see that he's so hurt.
Yep. Yep.
What's sad too is that in these scenes following the scene of her in their place, you see her having these hallucinations of like him coming back and them having like a good actual honest conversation and her telling him her true feelings instead of this mean shit that she's just saying because she's being defensive. And then we realize it's
I
hallucination and it's
know. I
bad.
wanted it to be true. Like maybe she's having a come to Jesus moment, like I think her dad is at this point,
Yeah.
And I was like, yay. And then no, it was just a hallucination. And this was after she was having the hallucinations, or has she had the hallucinations yet of Verna in her apartment?
I think this might be
Or does that happen next?
I can't remember
I
to be
can't
honest.
remember either.
Sorry. It might I can't remember if it's happening now and that's why they started fighting or if it's afterwards because she's just like
It
really
might be
going.
afterwards because she like holes up in the apartment for a while, right?
Yeah.
Like just yeah, I think it's coming. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and she
I
starts
think
getting
by
deep about when
Bill
she's like
leaving,
sleeping and awake and stuff and
right, and by
there's
Bill
like time
leaving,
jumps.
yeah, and she tries taking like sleeping, nothing's working. She's trying like sleeping pills and stuff. And I think this her now she's completely alone in there. And she's at the mercy of like her own mind now. And I think this is when I think Verna's able to get in there now then. Because Bill's gone. Bill
Totally.
leaves her. Yeah.
Yes, he leaves. She basically gave him no other option. And he's like, before he leaves too, he's like, I care about you,
Yeah.
I want you to take care of yourself. And she's like, the launch and also Candy. Like you're just screwing around with Candy. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. She was
Yeah.
not in the video. If she
Yep.
was, I didn't even notice that she was there. But she's just losing it. And then we also get to see Froderick growing angrier and bitter. He keeps doing cocaine. He's finally kind of come to the point where he's like, okay, there's something up with Morella and her
And he's
burner phone.
obsessing about her though, like obsessing about her going to this party at this point.
I know. And at first I thought it was just kind of this really sad, kind of sweet, like, oh, well, my
I did
wife.
too. I did
But
too.
then you start to realize that it's like the entitled, power hungry side of him of like, well, no one can do that to me. I'm this rich, powerful person. It's
But
like he
what is this,
can't like
episode
admit it to
5?
himself.
Right, episode 5, we've never seen that side of him though. He really
Right.
did seem like a bumbling doofus almost, kind of.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, but I think he is now so hopped up on cocaine that
Mm-hmm. He's very offended that his wife could potentially have betrayed him in some way. Um, so we're starting to see this like really gross side of him start to come out more and more. And he's talking to the doctors at the hospital about wanting to bring her home. And they're like, she really should not be going home. Like she was burned by acid rain. And
yeah.
he's
And
like,
not that much time has gone. Like she is in
no.
no shape to be going home, and he plays the Usher card on him.
Mm-hmm. He's like, well, we're all rich and powerful, and we have all the state of the art equipment. Makes your hospital look like fucking
Yep.
scum on the bottom of my shoe.
Yep. Yep.
So he, in the end, gets what he wants, and we see him telling their daughter Lenore that we've almost got her. And when he says that to her, it's like this really weird, creepy undertone that Lenore kind of picks up on, but she's just
Yep.
like, okay, well, I'm glad mom's coming home, I guess. Poor freaking Lenore.
Well, he
I feel
tells
really bad.
Lenore, right, like where I'm going to get all the best specialists are going to come to her, and it
Yes.
convinces her that it's in her mom's best interest that she be brought home to get the proper care
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
only the
So,
Ushers can provide, not some lowly little hospital.
right.
So, yeah.
But yeah, and that brings this episode to an end.
Ah.
So we're done with our reviews for the night. Like we said, we don't have any other segments except we will, of course, do our monstrous mention for the episode. And again, we're going to hold off on ratings until we finish up with the series on our next episode when we'll be going through episodes 6, 7, and 8. And so our monstrous mention for this week is Projectile Varmint, aka Susie. And Susie is an artist and a podcaster, and she's on both the Horror Movie Weekly podcast and her new baby, Nobody's Horror Podcast, which she started up with Lonely recently. And the horror content podcast, where she and Lovely clean up the ugly things so you don't have to. Their bi-weekly show features 2 hosts and rotating guest content experts tackling the nitty-gritty complex horror topics in an attempt to make the genre more approachable for frequent fright flyers and newbies alike. And they value diverse voices and perspectives in horror.
We love that.
We do. I've been enjoying their podcast a lot so far. I do miss Susie's drawings that she was doing for every Horror Movie Weekly podcast on their Instagram. I think their Instagram's down right now, so I don't know if she's kind of revamping it or what she's doing with it. But for a while, she was doing illustrations for each episode, and I thought that they were a lot of fun. And I'd love to see her art because I know that she makes art outside of that as well. I just couldn't find any links or anything for any work that she does. So I'm gonna have to hit her up and ask. But I'm gonna
for
have
sure.
yeah, she's great. She's funny. And she reminds me a lot of you, Tammy. Like I feel like your personalities are pretty
Really?
similar. Yeah.
Oh, now I'm interested.
Yes. She is really hilarious. And I love her.
Oh,
But
awesome.
I'll have all of her links for the things that I could find. Like she has her personal Instagram. Then they have the Nobody's Horror Podcast Instagram. And I'll also include links for the actual podcasts themselves. And then also Horror Movie Weekly has its own website. So I'll link
Awesome.
that for
Oh,
her
yes.
as well. And if I can get any extra links out of her before I actually edit and publish this episode, then those will also be in the show notes.
All right.
But yeah, I
Awesome.
think that's going to do it for this week. You want to lead us out, Tammy?
I would love to. So that is going to do it for this episode of Horror Through Her Eyes. Next week, we'll be reviewing the next 3 episodes of Fall of the House of Usher. Wrap it up, right? I think.
Yes.
So that's your homework for right now. Watch it, please, if you haven't. But I'm really hoping if you've listened to this point, you have finished the series. No cheating. Okay, so, or if you're just, if you're like watching along with us, that's fine too. So then you need to watch the next 3 and I will accept that. Please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast anywhere that podcasts are found. Please, 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 please,
Please.
join our Horror Through Her Eyes Facebook group page, which is really starting to take off. We're getting a lot of interaction on there. I love it. You can email us at horrorthroughhereyes@yahoo.com. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at Horror Through Her Eyes Pod with an underscore in between each word. You can follow us on TikTok at Horror Through Her Eyes Pod, which I have taught myself TikTok, so I'm really trying to keep it up.
I love your little videos, by the way. I don't even want to
you.
try and make anything like specific for Instagram. I'm just going to repost your TikToks. So
it's fine with me.
keep doing it.
It's like I figured out how to do one thing. I'm so proud of myself. You can follow us on Letterboxd at Horror Her Eyes. As we bid you farewell, we hope you enjoyed your time with us on Horror Through Her Eyes, episode 4 already.
Oh my God.
It's been a blast diving into the depths of dread with you. It really has. And until next time, remember to live deliciously.
Yeah. Do it. Live deliciously.
Do it.